Marcus Thompson sat in his worn leather chair staring at the empty corner of his small apartment. The blue dog bed that usually held his best friend Bruno was cold and untouched for 3 long days now. The silence in the room felt heavy like a thick blanket that made it hard to breathe. Marcus rubbed his prosthetic leg where it connected to what remained of his real one. The doctors at the VA hospital had done their best after the explosion in Afghanistan took his leg below the knee. But they could not fix the invisible wounds that cut deeper than any physical injury. The nightmares came every night. The sudden loud noises made him jump and sweat. The crowds of people made his heart race until he thought it might burst. That was before Bruno came into his life 2 years ago. The Golden Retriever was not just any dog. He was specially trained to help veterans like Marcus who struggled with PTSD and physical disabilities. Bruno could sense when Marcus was about to have a panic attack even before Marcus knew it himself. The smart dog would nudge him gently and lead him to a quiet place to sit down and breathe slowly. When Marcus dropped things because his hand shook from anxiety, Bruno would pick them up and bring them to him. When the nightmares came in the middle of the night, Bruno would wake him up by licking his face and staying close until the scary dreams went away. The dog even knew how to get Marcus his medicine bottle when the pain got too bad. Bruno wore a bright orange vest that told everyone he was a working service dog. People were not supposed to pet him or distract him when he was working. His job was to take care of Marcus, and he did it perfectly every single day. They went everywhere together. To the grocery store where Bruno helped Marcus stay calm when too many people were around. To the doctor visits where Bruno lay quietly beside the examination table. To the park where they both got fresh air and exercise. 3 days ago, Marcus had fallen asleep on the couch watching television. When he woke up, the front door was slightly open. He must have forgotten to lock it properly. Bruno was nowhere to be found. Marcus called his name over and over, but got no answer. He grabbed his crutch and searched every room in the small apartment, hoping Bruno was just hiding somewhere. Marcus spent the first day walking through his neighborhood calling Bruno's name. His prosthetic leg hurt from all the walking, but he did not care. He knocked on doors asking neighbors if they had seen a Golden Retriever wearing an orange service vest. Most people were kind and said they would keep an eye out for Bruno. Some promised to call Marcus if they saw anything. On the second day, Marcus made flyers with Bruno's picture on them. He wrote his phone number in big letters and the words "Missing Service Dog Reward." He taped the flyers to telephone poles and store windows. He posted on social media asking people to share the information. He called every animal shelter within 50 miles to report Bruno missing. Now it was the 3rd day, and Marcus felt hopeless. Without Bruno, his anxiety was getting worse every hour. He had not slept well since Bruno disappeared. Every small noise made him jump and look around expecting danger. Going to the store seemed impossible without his faithful companion by his side. Marcus picked up his phone to call the shelters again. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely dial the numbers. He wondered if he would ever see Bruno again. The dog was more than a pet. Bruno was his lifeline to the world. Without him, Marcus felt like he was drowning in fear and loneliness. The Golden Retriever had given him hope and courage to live again after the war had taken so much away from him. Now Marcus could only pray that somewhere out there Bruno was safe and trying to find his way home too. Bruno wandered down the busy street with his head hanging low and his golden fur dirty from sleeping outside for 3 nights. The normally clean and well-groomed service dog looked nothing like his usual self. His bright orange vest that everyone recognized was gone. It had torn off when he squeezed through a chain-link fence trying to find his way home to Marcus. Without his vest, Bruno looked like any other stray dog walking the streets. People walked past him without giving him a second look. Some even crossed to the other side of the sidewalk when they saw him coming. Bruno did not understand why nobody would help him. He was used to people being kind and respectful when they saw his service dog uniform. The Golden Retriever had never been away from Marcus for more than a few hours since they became partners 2 years ago. Every morning, Bruno woke up next to Marcus' bed ready to start their daily routine. He would bring Marcus his medicine bottle and help him get dressed. Then they would eat breakfast together and plan their day. Now Bruno felt scared and confused in a way he had never experienced before. The world seemed too big and too loud without Marcus by his side. Car horns honked loudly, making Bruno jump and shake with fear. The sounds reminded him of the explosions and gunshots that used to make Marcus have panic attacks. Bruno had been trained to stay calm during loud noises so he could help Marcus feel safe. But now he was alone, and the training felt harder to remember. Bruno tried to follow familiar scents that might lead him back to their small apartment. He put his nose to the ground and walked slowly, sniffing for any trace of Marcus' smell. But the city had too many different smells all mixed together. Exhaust from cars, food from restaurants, garbage from dumpsters, and the scent of hundreds of other people walking the same streets. When night came, Bruno looked for safe places to sleep. The first night he found a cardboard box behind a restaurant. The second night he curled up under a park bench. The third night he tried to sleep in an alley between two buildings, but the ground was cold and hard. Bruno was not used to being outside alone. At home he slept on his comfortable dog bed next to Marcus, where he felt warm and protected. Food was another problem Bruno had never faced before. At home Marcus fed him good quality dog food at the same times every day. Now Bruno had to search through garbage cans, hoping to find scraps of food that people had thrown away. His stomach hurt from hunger, and sometimes the food he found made him feel sick. Bruno missed everything about his life with Marcus. He missed their morning walks when Marcus would talk to him about his plans for the day. He missed lying quietly beside Marcus during his therapy appointments. He missed the way Marcus would scratch behind his ears and tell him what a good boy he was. Most of all, Bruno missed having a job to do. His whole life had purpose when he was taking care of Marcus. He knew exactly what to do when Marcus felt anxious or scared. He knew how to get help when Marcus needed his medicine. He knew how to guide Marcus through crowds and keep him safe from danger. Now Bruno felt useless and lost. He wanted nothing more than to find Marcus and go back to their normal life together. But every street looked the same, and every turn seemed to take him further away from home. Bruno kept walking and hoping that somehow Marcus was looking for him too. The loyal dog did not know that Marcus was searching everywhere and putting up flyers with his picture. Bruno just knew he had to keep trying to find his way back to the person who needed him most. Jake Martinez finished his third beer and slammed the empty bottle down on the wooden table. Around him sat his 4 buddies from the motorcycle club. Tommy was polishing his leather jacket while Rick and Steve argued about which bike was faster. Danny sat quietly checking his phone and trying to avoid eye contact with Jake. The 5 men spent most evenings at their favorite bar called Rider's Rest. It was a dark, smoky place where bikers gathered to drink and talk about their motorcycles. The walls were covered with pictures of bikes, and the floor was sticky from spilled beer. Jake loved this place because everyone knew he was the leader of their small group. Jake had always been the toughest guy in any room. He was tall and strong with tattoos covering both arms and a thick beard that made him look mean. The other guys followed him because they were either scared of him or wanted to be like him. Jake enjoyed having power over people, especially those he thought were weaker than him. Tommy looked up from his jacket and pointed toward the window. "Hey Jake, look at that nasty dog outside sniffing around our bikes." The animal looked dirty and thin, like it had been living on the streets for days. Jake stood up and walked to the window to get a better look. The dog was golden colored, but its fur was matted and dirty. It walked with its head down and its tail between its legs like it was scared of everything around it. The dog stopped near Jake's motorcycle and sniffed the ground, looking for any scraps of food that might have fallen. Jake felt angry just looking at the pathetic animal. He hated stray dogs and thought they were nothing but trouble. In his mind, they carried diseases and made neighborhoods look bad. Jake had grown up in a house where his father taught him that showing kindness to weak things was a sign that you were weak too. "That stupid dog better not scratch my bike," Rick said, standing up to join Jake at the window. "My paint job cost me $500, and I do not want some fleabag mutt messing it up." The other guys nodded in agreement and finished their drinks quickly. Jake pushed his chair back and headed toward the door. "Come on, guys, let's go teach that mutt a lesson about staying away from our property." He did not wait to see if the others would follow him. Jake knew they always did whatever he told them to do. Outside, the evening air was cool, and the parking lot was mostly empty except for their 5 motorcycles parked in a row. The dog was still sniffing around looking for food, but it backed away when it saw the men coming toward it. Bruno could sense danger in the way they walked, and the angry looks on their faces. Jake pulled on his leather gloves and cracked his knuckles. He had been in a bad mood all day because his boss at the construction site had yelled at him for being late again. Jake needed someone or something to take his anger out on, and this stray dog seemed like the perfect target. The dog tried to move away, but Jake stepped in front of it, blocking its path. "Where do you think you are going, you mangy mutt?" Jake said in a voice that sounded scary and mean. The dog whimpered and tried to go around him, but Tommy moved to block that direction too. Rick and Steve spread out so the dog could not escape in any direction. Danny hummed back, looking uncomfortable, but not brave enough to speak up and stop what was about to happen. He had seen Jake do cruel things before, and knew better than to get in his way when he was angry. Bruno looked up at the 5 men surrounding him, and his training kicked in. He had been taught never to bite or attack humans, even when they were being mean to him. Service dogs were supposed to stay calm and gentle, no matter what happened to them. But Bruno could feel the danger in the air, and his heart started beating very fast. Jake smiled in a way that was not friendly at all. He was about to do something that would change everything for both him and the innocent dog who just wanted to find his way home to Marcus. Jake kicked his motorcycle to life, and the engine roared loudly in the quiet parking lot. Bruno jumped at the sudden noise and tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The 5 bikers had him surrounded, and Jake was revving his engine to scare the already frightened dog even more. "Get out of here, you stupid mutt!" Jake yelled over the noise of his motorcycle. He drove straight toward Bruno, expecting the dog to run away in fear. But Bruno was too scared to move fast enough. His legs felt frozen, and his heart was pounding so hard he could barely breathe. Jake did not slow down or turn away. Instead, he lifted his heavy boot and kicked Bruno hard in the side as he rode past. The force of the kick sent the golden retriever tumbling across the rough pavement. Bruno yelped in pain and struggled to get back on his feet. The other bikers laughed and cheered like they were watching a fun show instead of seeing an innocent animal get hurt. Tommy revved his engine and followed Jake's example. He drove his motorcycle in a circle around Bruno and kicked him again when the dog tried to crawl away. "This is awesome," Rick shouted as he joined in the cruel game. His boot connected with Bruno's back legs, and the dog cried out in pain. Steve was next, and he aimed his kick at Bruno's ribs. The sound of his boot hitting the dog's body made a sickening thud that echoed across the parking lot. Bruno tried to protect himself by curling up in a tight ball, but the attacks kept coming from all directions. His service dog training told him never to bite or fight back against humans, no matter how badly they hurt him. Even though every instinct told him to defend himself, Bruno forced himself to stay gentle and not attack his tormentors. Danny watched from beside his motorcycle, feeling sick to his stomach. He wanted to tell the others to stop, but he was too scared of Jake to speak up. Danny had been bullied by Jake before and knew what happened to people who crossed him. Still, watching an innocent dog get beaten made Danny feel like the worst kind of coward. Jake was having the most fun he had experienced in weeks. All his anger and frustration from work and life came pouring out as he kicked the helpless animal again and again. He did not see Bruno as a living creature with feelings. To Jake, the dog was just a thing he could hurt to make himself feel powerful and strong. Bruno could feel his ribs cracking under the repeated kicks. His breathing became shallow and painful. Blood was starting to appear on his golden fur where the boots had cut through his skin. Still, he did not growl or snap at the men hurting him. His training was too strong and his nature too gentle. The attack seemed to go on forever, but it probably lasted only a few minutes. Finally, Jake got bored and decided they had taught the dog enough of a lesson. He kicked Bruno one last time in the stomach and then climbed back on his motorcycle. "Come on, guys, let's get out of here before someone calls the cops," Jake said like nothing important had just happened. The 5 bikers started their engines and rode away into the night, leaving Bruno lying broken and bleeding on the cold pavement. Bruno could barely move as he watched the red taillights disappear down the street. Every part of his body hurt, and he could taste blood in his mouth. He tried to stand up, but his legs would not work properly. One of his ribs was definitely broken, and maybe more than one. A woman walking her small dog on the other side of the street had seen the whole terrible attack. She immediately pulled out her phone and called 911 to report what she had witnessed. Then she carefully approached Bruno to see if he was still alive. The woman could see that Bruno was badly hurt but still breathing. She spoke to him in a soft, gentle voice and carefully touched his head to comfort him. She waited with Bruno until the police and animal control officers arrived to help the injured dog. Bruno looked up at the kind woman with eyes full of pain and confusion. He did not understand why those men had hurt him so badly. All he wanted was to find Marcus and go home where he felt safe and loved. Marcus' phone rang at 7 in the morning and woke him from his first real sleep in 4 days. He had finally fallen asleep on the couch around 3 a.m. after another night of searching the streets for Bruno. His prosthetic leg was leaning against the coffee table, and his crutch was on the floor beside him. "Hello, this is Marcus Thompson," he answered in a tired voice that showed how worried and exhausted he felt. The caller identified herself as Dr. Sarah Chen from the Emergency Animal Hospital downtown. She told Marcus that they had a golden retriever who had been brought in after being attacked by a group of motorcycles. Marcus' heart started beating faster as Dr. Chen described the dog. Golden fur male, about 3 years old, and very well trained. The woman who found him said he was gentle even though he was badly hurt. Dr. Chen asked if Marcus could come to the hospital right away to see if this was his missing service dog. Marcus grabbed his prosthetic leg and put it on as fast as he could. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely attach it properly. He called a taxi because he was too nervous to drive himself. During the 20-minute ride to the hospital, Marcus tried to prepare himself for what he might find. The Emergency Animal Hospital was a clean white building with large windows and a sign that said 24-hour care. Marcus limped through the front doors using his crutch and told the receptionist who he was. She immediately led him to a room in the back where Dr. Chen was waiting. Dr. Chen was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and gentle hands. She explained that the dog had been brought in around midnight with several broken ribs and cuts on his body. Someone had kicked him repeatedly and left him for dead in a parking lot. But the dog was strong, and the injuries were not life-threatening with proper care. Marcus felt sick to his stomach, thinking about Bruno being hurt so badly. Dr. Chen led him to a room where the injured dog was lying on a soft blanket under warm lights. Marcus took one look and knew immediately that it was his Bruno. "Bruno," Marcus whispered as he approached the examination table. The golden retriever opened his eyes and tried to lift his head when he heard his owner's voice. His tail moved just a little bit, showing that he recognized Marcus even though he was too weak to wag it properly. Marcus gently touched Bruno's head, and the dog tried to lick his hand. Tears rolled down Marcus' face as he saw the bandages wrapped around Bruno's chest and the cuts on his beautiful golden fur. Someone had hurt his best friend, and Marcus felt angry and heartbroken at the same time. Dr. Chen explained that Bruno had 3 broken ribs and would need to stay in the hospital for several days. She said the dog had been incredibly brave and gentle throughout his treatment. Even while he was in pain, Bruno had not tried to bite any of the veterinary staff who were helping him. A police officer named Detective Rodriguez came to the hospital to talk to Marcus about what had happened. The witness who found Bruno had seen 5 men on motorcycles attacking the dog for no reason. She had written down some of the license plate numbers and given descriptions of the men to the police. Detective Rodriguez explained that attacking the service dog was a very serious crime. It was considered the same as attacking the disabled person who depended on that dog. The men who hurt Bruno could face years in prison and heavy fines if they were caught and convicted. Marcus stayed at the hospital all day, sitting beside Bruno's bed and talking to him softly. He told Bruno how sorry he was for not protecting him and how much he had missed him. Marcus promised that he would never let anyone hurt Bruno again. By evening, Bruno was feeling a little bit better. He was able to drink some water and eat a small amount of soft food. The pain medicine was helping and his breathing was easier. Most importantly, Bruno seemed much calmer and more relaxed now that Marcus was with him again. Dr. Chen told Marcus that Bruno would make a full recovery, but it would take time. The broken ribs would heal in about 6 weeks if Bruno rested and did not do too much activity. There might also be some emotional trauma from the attack that would require patience and gentle care. Marcus did not care how long it took or how much it cost. Bruno was his lifeline and his best friend. He would do whatever it took to help Bruno heal from this terrible experience. As Marcus held Bruno's paw and watched him sleep peacefully, he made a promise that the men who did this would pay for their cruelty. Detective Maria Rodriguez had worked on many animal cruelty cases during her 15 years with the police department, but this one made her especially angry. When she learned that the victim was a trained service dog who helped a disabled veteran, her determination to find the attackers grew even stronger. The witness, Mrs. Helen Foster, had given the police valuable information about the attack. She had been walking her small poodle when she saw 5 motorcycles surrounding the golden retriever in the parking lot outside Riders Rest Bar. Mrs. Foster watched in horror as the bikers took turns kicking the helpless dog. Mrs. Foster was brave enough to write down 2 complete license plate numbers and partial numbers from 2 other motorcycles before the men rode away. She also gave detailed descriptions of what each biker looked like and what they were wearing. Her information would prove to be crucial in solving the case. Detective Rodriguez ran the license plate numbers through the police computer system and got hits immediately. The first plate belonged to Jake Martins, who had a criminal record, including charges for assault and disturbing the peace. The second plate was registered to Tommy Reeves, who had been arrested twice for bar fights. Within 24 hours, Detective Rodriguez had identified all 5 men involved in the attack. Besides Jake and Tommy, there was Rick Williams, Steve Murphy, and Danny Santos. She learned that they all belonged to the same motorcycle club called Road Devils and spent most evenings drinking at Riders Rest. Detective Rodriguez studied each man's criminal history and found a pattern of violence and bullying behavior. Jake seemed to be the leader of the group and had the longest record of arrests. The others appeared to follow his lead and had shorter but similar histories of getting into trouble. The detective decided to start her investigation by visiting Riders Rest to talk to the bartender and other customers who might have seen the 5 men on the night of the attack. She wore plain clothes so she would not attract attention as a police officer. Riders Rest was exactly the kind of place Detective Rodriguez had expected. Dark, smoky, and filled with the smell of beer and cigarettes. The bartender was a heavy man named Chuck who had worked there for 10 years. He knew Jake and his friends well because they came in almost every night. Chuck told Detective Rodriguez that Jake and his crew had been at the bar on the night Bruno was attacked. They had been drinking for several hours, and Jake was in one of his mean moods. Chuck said Jake always got meaner when he drank too much and often looked for fights with people he thought were weaker than him. Other customers confirmed that they had seen the 5 bikers leave the bar around 9:30 that night. One woman said she had heard Jake talking about teaching some stray dog a lesson. Another customer said the group seemed excited about something when they left, like they were planning to cause trouble. Detective Rodriguez also found security cameras from businesses near the parking lot where Bruno was attacked. The cameras showed the 5 motorcycles surrounding the dog and the bikers taking turns kicking him. The video evidence was clear enough to identify each man and would be powerful proof in court. The detective obtained search warrants for each of the 5 men's homes and workplaces. She wanted to find the clothes they wore that night and any other evidence that connected them to the attack. She also planned to seize their motorcycles to check for blood or fur that might have gotten on them during the assault. Detective Rodriguez coordinated with federal authorities because attacking a service dog was also a federal crime. Service dogs were considered working animals protected under federal disability rights laws. The men could face charges in both state and federal court, which meant much harsher penalties if convicted. As the investigation continued, Detective Rodriguez learned more about Marcus and his military service. He had been injured by a roadside bomb in Afghanistan and earned a Purple Heart for his sacrifice. The fact that these bikers had attacked the service dog of a wounded veteran made their crime even more despicable. Detective Rodriguez felt a personal connection to this case because her own brother had served in Iraq and struggled with PTSD after coming home. She understood how important service dogs were to veterans who battled invisible wounds from their military service. The detective was confident that she had enough evidence to arrest all 5 men and win convictions against them. She planned to charge Jake with the most serious crimes since he was clearly the leader who organized and encouraged the attack. The others would face slightly lesser charges, but still serious enough to send them to prison. Detective Rodriguez wanted to make sure that Marcus and Bruno got justice for this senseless act of cruelty. She also hoped that prosecuting these men would send a message to others that attacking service animals would not be tolerated in her city. Federal prosecutors also announced they would file charges under the Americans with Disabilities Act and federal animal protection laws. The FBI opened its own investigation to determine if this was part of a pattern of hate crimes against disabled people. The combined state and federal charges meant the men could face up to 10 years in prison each. Bruno was slowly getting better, but Dr. Chen said the attack had traumatized him emotionally as well as physically. The gentle dog, who had never been afraid of anything, now flinched when he heard loud noises or saw groups of people. Marcus spent every day at the hospital talking softly to Bruno and helping him feel safe again. The overwhelming support from the public helped Marcus feel less alone in his fight for justice. He received thousands of messages from people around the world who were outraged by the attack on Bruno. Many were from other veterans who understood the special bond between service members and their support animals. Marcus used interviews with news reporters to educate people about service dogs and the challenges faced by disabled veterans. He hoped that Bruno's story would help prevent future attacks and make people more aware of how important these animals were to the people who depended on them. The 5 men sat in jail unable to make bail because the charges against them were so serious. They were beginning to understand that their moment of cruel entertainment would cost them years of their lives and destroy their reputations forever. 6 months after the brutal attack, the trial of the 5 bikers began in the downtown courthouse. The courtroom was packed with supporters of Marcus and Bruno, including dozens of veterans who had come to show their solidarity. News cameras lined the hallway outside as reporters waited to cover every detail of the proceedings. Judge Patricia Williams was known for being tough on violent crimes and had specifically requested to oversee this case. She had served in the military herself before becoming a lawyer and understood the importance of service animals to disabled veterans. Judge Williams made it clear that she would not tolerate any disruption or disrespect in her courtroom. District Attorney Michael Chen served as the lead prosecutor and had prepared his case carefully over the past 6 months. He had video evidence, witness testimony, and expert witnesses who would explain the training and value of service dogs. Chen was confident that he could prove beyond any doubt that the 5 men were guilty of serious crimes. The defense attorneys tried to argue that their clients had been drinking and did not realize they were attacking a trained service dog. They claimed it was a case of poor judgment rather than deliberate cruelty to a working animal. But the prosecutors had evidence showing the men had continued the attack even after Bruno showed no signs of aggression. Marcus was the first witness called to testify, and his appearance in the courtroom was powerful and emotional. He wore his dress military uniform with his service medals, including the Purple Heart he had earned in Afghanistan. Marcus walked slowly to the witness stand using his crutch because his prosthetic leg was bothering him that day. The prosecutor asked Marcus to tell the jury about his military service and how he had been injured. Marcus' voice was steady but filled with emotion as he described the roadside bomb that took his leg and left him with severe PTSD. He explained how the invisible wounds of war had been harder to heal than his physical injuries. Marcus then testified about meeting Bruno and how the service dog had changed his life completely. He described how Bruno could sense his panic attacks before they happened and guide him to safety. The dog helped him navigate crowds, retrieved his medication, and provided the emotional support that kept him from falling into despair. When the prosecutor asked Marcus to describe his relationship with Bruno, several jurors wiped tears from their eyes. Marcus explained that Bruno was not just a pet, but a highly trained medical device that allowed him to function in society. Without Bruno, Marcus said he would probably be housebound and might not even be alive today. The defense attorney cross-examined Marcus and tried to suggest that any well-trained dog could do the same job as Bruno. But Marcus calmly explained that service dogs received 2 years of specialized training and were matched carefully with their disabled partners. The bond between them was irreplaceable and could not be easily recreated. Dr. Sarah Chin testified about Bruno's injuries and the treatment he required after the attack. She showed the jury photographs of Bruno's broken ribs and cuts that made several people in the courtroom gasp in shock. Dr. Chen explained that the injuries were consistent with being kicked repeatedly by heavy boots. The veterinarian also testified about the emotional trauma Bruno had suffered. She said the gentle dog, who had never shown fear or aggression, was now anxious around groups of people and loud noises. Bruno would need months of behavioral therapy to overcome the psychological damage from the attack. Mrs. Helen Foster took the stand as the key eyewitness who had seen the entire attack. She described in detail how the 5 bikers surrounded Bruno and took turns kicking him while the dog tried to protect himself. Mrs. Foster said she had never seen such deliberate cruelty toward a helpless animal. The prosecutor played the security camera video that showed the attack from multiple angles. The courtroom was silent as everyone watched the 5 men systematically beating Bruno while he lay on the ground trying to curl up in a ball. Several jurors looked away from the screen because the images were too disturbing to watch. Expert witnesses testified about the federal laws that protect service animals and the penalties for attacking them. They explained that service dogs were considered working federal animals, and harming them was equivalent to attacking the disabled person who depended on them. A psychiatrist who specialized in PTSD testified about how the attack on Bruno had affected Marcus' mental health. The doctor said that losing his service dog, even temporarily, had caused Marcus' anxiety and depression to worsen significantly. The trauma of knowing Bruno had been hurt was almost as damaging as the original injury from the war. Character witnesses, including Marcus' former military commanders and therapists, testified about his service to his country and his struggle with disability. They painted a picture of a hero who had sacrificed for his fellow Americans and deserved protection, not cruelty, from his fellow citizens. The defense tried to present the 5 bikers as good men who had made a terrible mistake while drinking, but the prosecutor showed evidence of their previous violent behavior and Jake Martinez's history of bullying people he saw as weak or different. As the testimony phase ended, it was clear that the evidence against the 5 men was overwhelming. The video security footage, witness accounts, and expert testimony had built a powerful case that would be difficult for any jury to ignore. Marcus felt hopeful that justice would finally be served for the attack on his beloved Bruno. The jury took only 3 hours to reach their verdict after watching the security video and hearing testimony from Marcus and the other witnesses. When Judge Williams asked the jury foreman to read the verdict, the courtroom was completely silent. Guilty on all counts for all 5 defendants. Jake Martinez received the harshest sentence of 5 years in federal prison, plus 3 years of probation. As the ringleader who organized and encouraged the attack, he was held most responsible for Bruno's injuries. Judge Williams said his actions showed a pattern of cruelty and bullying that required serious punishment. Tommy Reeves, Rick Williams, and Steve Murphy each received 3 years in federal prison plus probation. The judge said their decision to follow Jake and participate in the attack showed they were equally guilty of the crime. Danny Santos received 2 years in federal prison because he had not actively kicked Bruno, but had failed to stop the others. In addition to prison time, all 5 men were ordered to pay $50,000 each in restitution to cover Bruno's medical bills and additional training costs. They were also banned from owning or being around animals for 10 years after their release from prison. The judge wanted to make sure they could never hurt another innocent animal. The sentences made national news and were praised by veterans groups and animal rights organizations. The case set an important legal precedent that attacking service animals would result in serious federal charges and long prison sentences. Legal experts said it would help protect other service dogs and their disabled partners. Marcus felt relieved and grateful that justice had been served, but his focus remained on helping Bruno recover from the trauma of the attack. The golden retriever had healed physically from his broken ribs, but the emotional scars were taking much longer to fade away. Dr. Chen referred Bruno to a specialist in animal behavior therapy who worked specifically with traumatized service dogs. The therapist, Dr. Amanda Price, used gentle techniques to help Bruno overcome his fear of groups of people and loud noises. The process was slow, but Bruno gradually began to show signs of his old confident personality. Marcus spent hours every day working with Bruno to rebuild their partnership and trust. He used positive reinforcement and patience to help his service dog remember that most people were kind and would not hurt him. Slowly, Bruno began to relax when they went out in public together. The support from the community continued long after the trial ended. A local foundation raised money to establish the Bruno Fund, which provided financial assistance to veterans who needed service dogs. Marcus was asked to serve on the board of directors and help other disabled veterans find the animal partners they needed. Marcus used his experience to become an advocate for stronger laws protecting service animals. He spoke at conferences and testified before legislators about the importance of these working dogs to disabled people. His story helped pass new federal legislation that increased penalties for attacking service animals. Bruno slowly returned to his duties as Marcus' service dog, but their relationship had grown even stronger through the healing process. The attack had shown both of them how much they meant to each other and how important their partnership was for Marcus' ability to live independently. Marcus noticed that Bruno was more protective of him, now always positioning himself between Marcus and strangers until he was sure they were friendly. The dog had learned that the world could be dangerous, but he was still willing to do his job because he loved Marcus and wanted to help him. A year after the attack, Marcus and Bruno were invited to speak at a national conference for veterans with disabilities. They shared their story of survival and recovery to inspire other veterans who were struggling with PTSD and physical injuries. The audience gave them a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. The 5 men who attacked Bruno were serving their prison sentences and would remain behind bars for years to come. Jake Martinez had tried to appeal his conviction, but the appeals court upheld the original verdict and sentence. The other 4 men accepted their punishment and would eventually be released with permanent criminal records. Marcus established a nonprofit organization called Bruno's Heroes that trained and provided service dogs to combat veterans at no cost. The organization grew quickly with support from donors who had followed their story and wanted to help other veterans in need. Within 3 years, they had placed over 100 service dogs with disabled veterans. Bruno became something of a celebrity in the service dog community and was often invited to demonstrations and training events. Despite his fame, he remained focused on his primary job of taking care of Marcus. The golden retriever had proven that even after experiencing cruelty and trauma, he could still trust humans and do the work he was born to do. The bond between Marcus and Bruno had been tested by violence and separation, but emerged stronger than ever. They continued their daily routines of helping each other navigate the challenges of life. Marcus provided Bruno with love and care, while Bruno gave Marcus the independence and confidence he needed to thrive. Their story became a powerful reminder that service animals are not just pets but essential partners who deserve protection and respect. The cruel attack that could have destroyed their lives instead became the foundation for helping countless other veterans find hope and healing through the love of a specially trained dog. Marcus often reflected on how something so terrible had led to so much good in the world. Bruno had suffered greatly, but his pain had not been meaningless. Together, they had turned their tragedy into triumph and their healing into hope for others who walked similar paths of recovery and resilience.